Hi, everybody. Steve Falcon Napier. Welcome to the Circle of Brilliance. Today, we're going to talk about a new subject, which is the 7 tensions of leadership. This is something that came out in 2020. And it's an interesting little thing. I thought it'd be fun for us to look at what they consider these tensions to be. Their use of the word is different than our use of the word. So we're going to see if we can figure out where do these different extremes in leadership live on the change grid. And then is there a pattern we're noticing? How might we move somebody, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll do our normal merging your brilliance thing. But while we're waiting for our colleagues to all join in on the call, let me share with you something that happened here a couple of days ago. So, you guys know I live in a very large over 55 community. So this is Sun City West. And like any community our size, that's operated by a board, and the general manager actually is an employee who reports to the board, blah, 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 blah. So this is a pretty big deal. Our operating budget is probably $10+ million per year. And so it's, this is a community of 35,000 people if every home has 2 occupants. So anywho, well, let's just say there's a big hullabaloo going on in Sun City West because there's a group of people that are very upset with the way that the general manager might be handling things and on and on and on. And so they've decided to create a new website, a movement to recall people, blah, 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 blah. So I become aware of this. I, of course, am curious to know what's going on in the community, and they're having a big meeting this past Tuesday. So I decided to go to the meeting. Now, I tend to be someone who works very hard at remaining inside of the green circle as much as I can, all the time. I have said on countless occasions that time is precious. There's no reason for us to fill that time dealing with unpleasant issues or unpleasant people. We don't know how much time each of us have, so let's fill it with as much joy as we possibly can. And that's pretty much my world. I don't handle people's heightened emotions very well. I certainly don't handle negativity very well or whatever, because it moves me out of my green circle. And I don't want to do that. So knowing fully well that this meeting was probably going to be very contentious, and that it was going to be either a grumble fest all the way up to the worst possible explosion you can, just know that I knowingly knew I was going to, or I knew this is what I was walking into. So we get to this conference room where this event is being held, and there must have been seats for, say, 150, and there are 500 people that are there, and they're doing 2 of these sessions. So as we are sitting there listening to this presentation, it was very clear that we weren't going to hear very many, if any, actual concrete facts, if we were actually going to be shown any real evidence of what's going on. Instead, for an hour and a half, people ranted and complained and threw out all kinds of non sequiturs and cause and effect relationships that weren't cause and effect. I mean, they were committing every linguistic violation in the book. So it derailed me, to say the very least. It sucked me very far up grid to the point that we decided to leave early. And on the way out, this one of the people who had spoken, who was the most abysmal of them all, asked us why we were leaving early. And I said, I heard enough that I'm comfortable signing your little petition for recall, but I'm not hearing the kind of facts that I need. I'm hearing a lot of emotion. I'm hearing a lot of accusations, a lot of unsubstantiated claims, that sort of thing. I'm hearing people share their personal nightmare sorts of stories. And so to kind of get to the main point of this, the gal said, well, we have to do something to build a fire under everybody. And so I thought, all right, let's explain what's going on the change grid. And we've talked about this dynamic before, but this was one really in process. So let me start by saying that I don't believe that any of these people who spoke were actually aware enough, maybe even intelligent enough to have done any of the stuff that they were doing from a calculated, deliberate sort of way. I think they were just there doing whatever their tension was telling them to do, and they were all turning it into a shared gripe session. Um, Anywho, they were all, you could just watch the audience getting increasingly more and more upgraded as it was going on. And so, anyway, out I said, there's too much emotion. You're awakening a whole lot of stress in everybody, but you're not giving them any substance on which that these changes need to be made, blah, blah. And she goes, we don't need to do that. If we can upset people enough, we'll get their signatures.
Wow.
Right. Wow. And so I thought, all right, I know where that playbook is, where that play is coming from. We've seen it play out in, politics, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm like, wow. So here we have somebody who is very far outgrid. And I'm going to say the outgrid danger zone because of how emotionally charged they were. I mean, they're ready to fight this in a big, big, big way. Bottom line is, if you want to get rid of the general manager, you have to get 7 out of the 10 board members to vote to oust him. And he's got a lot of those board members wrapped around his little finger, to the point that the board is convinced that they work for the general manager instead of, no, the general manager works for the board. And so anyway, they're out there, doing all their rant, blah, 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 blah stuff. But how are they manipulating the people? They're manipulating the people by trying to drive everybody as far upgrid as they can, because they believe that's the best way to stir up the I want to say the legend that they're trying to put forth as being real, or the myth, whatever. Get out there, talk to people about it, be upset when you're talking about it, get everybody else upset, and then get them to sign the documents that are necessary for a recall to actually occur. And so here I am kind of thinking like, well, that means we're recalling these people without any real facts. We're just recalling people because a group of upset people got other people upset enough. And so I said to her, well, let's assume for a second that you're successful in your recall attempt. Who's going to replace the board, and who's going to who's going to step in for the general manager? Or what's your process to manage this transition? And how do you know whoever you end up with next isn't going to be equally problematic? And they said, we'll deal with all of that when we get to it.
Mm-mm.
And so I'm kind of like,
No, that sounds like Congress now.
well, this is my whole point. And so I just wanted to bring this to your guys' attention to illustrate a few points. Number one, I do like to think that I know what I'm doing when it comes to this topic of tension management, but that doesn't mean that I'm not susceptible to all the things that derail people. And I know that even though I'm sitting there in this room going like, isn't this very interesting? I wanted to focus my observations on how the audience was reacting. But I'm hearing this very poorly structured presentation that's being delivered very, very poorly in an overly crowded room with very poor acoustics and a sound system that just plain sucks. And so, you get into it, yeah. Any thoughts you guys want to share on? I like Shag's Jawohl, Frau Kommandant. So there you go. Anyone else want to chime in? Any thoughts around this dynamic?
Isn't that the challenge of our time, you think?
Well, I think this dynamic is playing itself out in many arenas, and I think it routinely does across all sorts of areas of life. I think this is a really common
Hmm.
sort of mechanism that's in play. Again, I don't think these people know that what they're doing is manipulating somebody. I don't think that any of these people are actually that well trained or that bright. I think their communication skills overall suck. But
Hmm.
at some primal level, they know we're upset. Let's get everybody else upset, because all we need them to do is sign this petition.
It just tells me, because I do this, I have to center myself and meditate every day just to
Mhm.
just know living in the world,
Yep.
just living in this world. So it just tells you what work it is to stay detached, to be able to step back and say, isn't that interesting? Let's observe this. Let's be willing, as much as we know intellectually, we're still human beings whose values buttons are touched and pushed and triggered and all that good stuff.
Yep.
And it's a calling to do this kind of work. It really is, and
Yeah.
it's very, very important, for all of us to remember that how easy it is to get pulled.
Right, right. And so, of course, we need to do whatever we need to do to manage our own level of tension before we start to try to help other people manage their level of tension. If we move up grid, we don't have a different upgrade experience because, to Kathy's point, the knowledge base we have or the experiences that we've all had, we need to be at an optimal place on the change grid for us to do an optimal job of using what we know to help whatever the situation is around there. So if we get moved between the red and the green circle, or in the case of the situation I've just described to you, the outgrid danger zone to the upgrid danger zone, then, and by the way, they're trying to also turn a lot of these upgrid people into outgrid people, trying to get them to become fighters for the cause or whatever. But yeah,
Right.
yeah, no
So
one's
they're
really,
harnessing the emotions. That's why I like what Kathy just talked about, because the emotional system, it really short circuits in many ways cognitive reasoning. That's why when you're high up in stress, the energy output is less for cognition than it is for emotion,
yeah,
because it's designed for you to actually do something with that emotion.
yep,
And those systems operate like 10 times faster.
yep,
And so
yep.
we're literally designed to give emotion the upper hand. So, like, Kathy's doing somatic training, and when I hear organizations talking about, oh, it's touchy feely kind of stuff, I'm like, dude, these kinds of intangibles is what really exacerbates and drive choices and decisions that go over the edge.
That's right. That's
So
right.
if people don't have that kind of understanding and awareness, then they're just hijacked. And that's why we're seeing so much of this around the world, I think.
That's
I
right.
think about the Israel Hamas situation right now.
Yep.
The citizens are on fire, over there for how they believe it was mishandled from the beginning.
Well, yeah, 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 yeah. I have to, speaking my own personal truth, I was rather unclear about which group we favor. I have no idea. It's like I think it's Israel, but I know there's a large group of people who say, yeah, but Hamas or whatever that area has been, persecuted for whatever, blah blah blah. And I'm just kind of going like, to the point of all this. I don't want to be derailed by another situation, even though I know that it is a horrible situation and blah, blah, blah. It's kind of like, do you guys ever just get to the point where you just kind of go like, I just can't play today,
Right,
you
right. Like
know?
I want to sit this one out, because that's like taking over like all of this here. It's in everyone's conversation. So all of a sudden we move from this attention and paying attention to why we're here and what we're doing, and all of this attention now and emotion is driven towards, wow, another war is going on, or this kind of
Yeah,
thing, because
yeah.
that's the so it's almost like the loudest person wins in some of these cases,
Well,
or at
and
least they
isn't
drive.
Yeah, isn't that the truth when it even comes to news cycles? Because while if you just look at the headlines for the past few days, everything is obviously about what's going on in the Middle East. Well, what happened to Ukraine? It seems like
Right.
it's lost. It's what do I say? It's sparkly bits to the people that are the world of media. Daniel, feel free to chime in. Go right ahead.
I was just looking for an opportunity.
Yeah, well, good luck with our group.
the
You just jumped in.
the conversation's too fascinating for me to open my mouth. And what it reminds me of is, as we've discussed in the past, each of these outgrid danger zones, they're
Mhm.
place. They're different sectors of the same ball of fire.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
And this is where our news organizations focus,
Yes.
Mm.
right? And we could look at the situation, I think, maybe in Israel and Hamas, and dance around the circle here,
Right.
that they're expected to stay down,
Mm.
down grid,
Yeah.
down grid, stay down grid, or stay, in grid, stay
Mhm.
deep in grid, just don't bother us,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Right. Just, yeah. Go
Stay
away
out of the
now.
way,
Be quiet. Go out. Yeah. Right.
right?
Exactly.
And then for whatever happens, and some upgrid folks get something to get their teeth into, to start stirring up the downgrid and the ingrid folks,
Well,
and
you're
then
absolutely right.
all of a sudden snap, because it's a cognitive switch to go
Mm.
from any one of those to the other one.
It definitely is changing as you move around the danger zones. I was trying to see if I could see where that backside of the change grid illustration is, but you guys know all these danger zones are physically adjacent to one another. And so people can easily move from being out too far out grid, up grid, in grid, down grid. But the ones that are vocal tend to be the out grid and the up grid. The upgrids, vocalizations, vocality. Oh, let's use that word, vocality, a new word. That's because they really are up in stress. And obviously, there's a lot of horrible, horrible things that would be going on there. So these people are the voices of um, the misery, the fear, that sort of stuff. And then out here, you've got the voices of the people who want to fight and want to retaliate, or are we're the ones who were the perpetrators, and their behaviors are so if you look at the adjective map here, this is the world of heinous behaviors. This is the world of really forget boundaries.
And in the middle between the two are the firebrands.
Yeah, going all around, right? But the where they're nowhere near is the middle of the change grid.
Not at all.
Yeah, they're the polar
Interesting.
opposite.
So
Yeah.
we say, T, that life is lived between the green and the red. So would we call what Daniel was just describing, that's kind of like life on the periphery or something like
Well,
that, it seems
the
like?
periphery, if not in the danger zone. So let's go back to what Kathy was sharing earlier. We're all out there living life. There's all kinds of things that are pulling us out of our center place that are just activities of daily living. Like, for example, the headlight on our car burned out. And so suddenly you got to go like, okay, fine, now I got to go get that taken care of. And then you get to the dealership and they go like, yeah, that's going to be $379. And you go like, for a light bulb? So that's one of these things that doesn't put you into danger zones, but it is still something that is upgrid or might have some outgrid qualities, whatever the case may be. So life is most definitely lived between the green and the red. But when you're talking about wars, or when you're talking about riots or that sort of thing, I think we really are we're talking danger zones. So I like your idea about they're on the periphery. They are living on this red circle, if not out there in the danger zone, on the dark side of the change sphere, if you will.
Got it.
And
So,
for those who are vocal, our recent situation with the pandemic and all has frustrated this loneliness among
mhm.
people, and people want to be heard, they want to be seen, they want to have an impact. And sometimes I think all of the tribe development that took place, really moved society into a negative space.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
it's cumulative. We like to think that that COVID is over. We know it's not, but nevertheless, the chaos of COVID seems to have settled down. But that doesn't mean that emotionally we're all over what we experienced emotionally and socially, psychologically during the lockdown and all the chaos that was happening around all that. That may very well be certainly not in the league of post-traumatic stress disorder, but it could still have a lasting impact on our psyche. And that didn't end just because a vaccine was developed, you know?
No, no, there's too much structure damage that went on in the pandemic. It's going to take a while. I
Mhm.
think that, like what Daniel was just describing to me, I feel the same way about technology. As fast as it's
Yes.
growing and is usurping people's attention, some people seem
Right.
to not understand or certainly unaware that there's a whole life lived outside of technology. Like when I hear people say, I Googled you. I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, that sounds obscene, number one, but what are you Googling me for? You know, I'm here in person. I can tell you what you need to know.
Right.
But they're like, I'd rather go to Google.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And this speaks to probably people's increasing addiction to the use of technology or social media, these sorts of things. So there are a lot of problems afoot. In fact, there was a graphic, I'll have to go digging for it, but it was talking about this whole idea about becoming addicted to technology. And um, it thought it was good to say that 15% of the population only uses technology to answer quick questions, and then they set it aside. And I'm kind of going like, yeah, but that means 85% of the population is far more connected. So how are you presenting this as normal?
Right.
No, 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 no. Anyway, let me throw one more thing from your training and see how you fit into this. You know how we've talked about people have a capacity, every activity has a certain size element to it. And so again, just to set that stage, let me remind you guys that to really understand the concept of size in terms of tension management and the change grid, you need to visualize in front of you a cube. You decide how big that cube is. It really doesn't matter. But that cube represents your total capacity to handle tasks, activities, goals, demands, whatever it happens to be. You've only got a certain capacity. Now, when you look at each of the things that you need to take care of in life, whether it's getting yourself ready for your day or going out there and taking care of some gigantic issue, every activity on your list can be thought of as its own kind of a cube, and it's going to have its own size, if you will. And so what we're trying to do with this concept of size is to get people to recognize that humans are people of limited capacity. We don't have infinite capacity. And depending on how old we are or how centered we are, that cube in front of us can change its overall dimensions. So maybe on a good day, we can handle a few more things, but on a bad day, you'll be lucky if we can handle one or two. That it's all going to be changing. And that, so when we think about, I just want to live my life, I just want to fill my life with whatever joy I possibly can, and then up, we turn on the news, or we're flipping through the social media, and suddenly we're being moved out grid, or up grid, and it is those things that we are hearing that become another activity in our cube. And the question sooner or later gets to the point of, do we even have the capacity to juggle another drama? Regardless of how um, huge the drama may be, do we really have the capacity to deal with it at the individual level? What do you guys think? Do you feel like your cube is full?
Yes, yes. I was gonna ask, like, where does the interplay of importance fit into that? Because, like, when you talk about,
Yeah,
things that impact you on a daily basis, like where you live,
yeah. Well,
that I would
remember
think that could add to it.
yeah, but the change cube is formed by the three perceptions for perceived ability, perceived challenge, and perceived importance
Ah,
at the activity level. So that's why these activities take the shape of a cube. So,
got it.
so yeah, so that's going to affect the overall, what do I say, behavior associated with the activity. But the one we really have to be looking at, I think, right now is not so much importance, although we'll get to that, as it is size.
Mhm.
See, because if something is really big, um, and it is really important, I may be more likely to put it inside of my cube, my overall capacity kind of cube. Where if it's a big activity and it's not important, well, then I might set it aside altogether. And so ultimately think of importance as traveling with the activity's own cube, and size as being really more about the capacity, where like the consumption of resources. Technically, size is about how many of our resources is it going to consume for us
Yeah,
to do whatever it happens to be.
got it.
Well,
And that's
and you're
consistent with the way the brain works, actually, because it does size up even, the best of intentions, right? So it
Yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
can spot, it's kind of like you can't out trick your consciousness. It understands um, the strong synaptic connections, and so
Of
it
course.
tries to make that association. So if you have this, what they call the BHAG goals, the big, hairy, audacious goals,
Yeah,
and you're trying to trick yourself into it instead of working on kind of micro immersion experiences, your consciousness already knows.
yeah, yeah.
It's
Exactly.
not.
Long before you start even actively thinking about it,
Right,
your brain
right.
already figured it out. Daniel, what were you about to say?
oh, I've lost it. I get involved in the conversation. I get it in or I don't.
Well, when it when it pops back, you just chime
I
right
I
in.
will.
apologize. Sorry, Daniel.
No,
Oh,
no, no,
no, no, no,
no,
no, no.
no. It's
Hey,
fascinating.
that's what the circle
Fascinating.
of brilliance is all about. Everybody is equal on this. You want to jump in, you jump in. Well, like anybody else, you just kind of don't wait. Chime in, get in there, get in there. Um, so, but again, let me address, Brian, your question about importance. Let's say that sitting in front of me, not in my big cube yet, I've got all these activities, and if conceptually you can imagine that each one of them is its own little cube sitting in front of you, and you get to the big ones, the ones that are going to take a lot of resources. How do you decide which ones to put in your cube? Well, that's where I think importance comes into prioritizing what can you do. And that's why I think when I'm talking about how, as terrible as things might be going in the Middle East, and as terrible as they're going in the Ukraine, and terrible as they're going in our own backyard and even within our own country or whatever, I only have so much capacity, and that capacity changes on a day by day basis.
You're,
So
it's
I
like
got
you're describing a video game.
exactly, exactly. And so I've got to become increasingly thoughtful, mindful about what I'm putting into my cube, or now add this dimension to it. Do you think that everything that's in your cube is something that you deliberately put there? Do you think there's a lot of people walking down your street throwing stuff into your cube?
Yeah,
My trash
that
cans are always full.
Yeah, right, right. And so it's not
absolutely.
just our stuff that's being put into our cube, it's other people's stuff that could be going into our cube. And how again responsible are we for what we allow to enter our own cube?
You know, something that just stepped into my cube as you're talking about this whole thing here. T is I said it sounded like a video game, and
Mhm.
then another part of me said, and it sounds like a decision making support system.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And then the video in my head shifted to that there are databases of task um, task resource
Yep,
requirements,
Mhm.
et cetera.
yep, yep, yep.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. For
Uh,
particular people who are doing like project planning, a lot of these things have been.
right. That to see the boxes get big, and then you're like, well, no, wait a minute, that's crowding out this one, and this one really is more important than that one.
Mhm.
Now,
Yeah.
how do I compress that? What can I move out of that? Where can I go? Where can I transition some of the effort so that it's, you know,
Yep, 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 yep.
there's a lot of tension in the very conceptualization of that idea.
That's correct. That's correct.
Mhm, mhm.
And even add to that, these things are taking cube shape conceptually. And I go like, well, yeah, you can put lots of cubes into your big cube, maybe, but are you actually able to assemble them inside of your cube in such a way that every single cubic inch of that cube is full? Or is the truth is that when you're stacking these cubes, there ends up being a lot of airspace between a bunch of them, you know?
Mhm.
And that airspace, I think people often think that as long as you've got time, we can give you a task to do it. And it's like, no, sometimes I need that airspace so that I can clear my mind, get ready for the next task. I need downtime. I need time to just chill, take a little break here and there. That's what all those air pockets are
Mm.
among the however you get your cubes. I mean, who's going to go like, okay, I just put in a 3x3 cube, I got room for a 1x1 and maybe a 2x2. Yeah, I mean, no one's doing that.
That would
Yeah.
have been me about 40 years ago, though,
Yeah,
T.
well, and to your point, I think that's also what project managers try to do, well, maybe management in general who are trying to optimize the
Mhm.
productivity they get out of their teams. They're saying, I don't want to watch you sit and, stare into empty space. They don't think that's a valuable activity, where I think all of us know, no, that could be a very valuable activity.
Yeah, we see that a lot. Like we're looking at all these different behavioral research dynamics to help people take better control over their own health. And what we see is exactly that. So like we ask people, like, what do you do if you have an extra 15 minutes? And in their mind, we have to work,
We have
right?
to
We
do
have to
something.
fill it with something. And so I even looked at this like research in terms of that space you talk about between action and reward and
Mhm.
how you create these dopamine pathways because dopamine isn't just one thing. It's associated with motivation. It's
Yep.
associated with expectations.
Focused
It's
attention. Yep. Mhm.
focus, attention, all these
Yep.
things. And so we looked at this research for how, to what Daniel was talking about, gamification, like the slot machines in
Yep.
Vegas are all over the place, right? And
Yep.
so the behavioral designer that designs it said, okay, we designed it for an opportunity. He called this the three-legged stool. There's an opportunity that, of course, is sized up in terms of the win, whatever that is. There's unpredictable rewards, and there's quick repeatability.
Mhm.
Those three variables is what they designed the slot machines off. And so
Sure.
that keeps, it's called a loop mechanism. So it keeps people's attention on those three variables. And
Mhm. Mhm.
But it also seeks to addict them to the task.
Exactly right.
Is that a desirable outcome in the situations that you're looking at?
If I'm a casino operator, that's what I want to have happen. I get that.
exactly.
It's almost like we're granting them permission to do that to us by virtue of the fact that we walked into the
Right.
casino, but it's like the media is trying to do it to us as well.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
And that's when you kind of go, wait, am I being manipulated for their outcome? Because we know, look, sooner or
Yes.
later, who gave us the quote a couple of days ago that the answer to every question is money or the cause? Because was that you, Daniel? Who it was just day before yesterday. They said that somebody famous, whatever, said that whatever situations you want to talk about, the answer is money.
Oh,
I'll have to look that up. I'm sure.
That was not me, but I recall it being said.
Yeah. So so we get it. They're trying to get what they want out of us. I understand that. I understand the mechanics. If they hired us, we could help them do it even more powerfully. But um, when it comes to us taking responsibility for managing our own private worlds, and again, that's inside this green circle. That's where we want to be. um, we have to take the responsibility to say, what am I allowing to enter into my world? Again, this goes back to what the oracle of the self is all about. Are those voices your voices, or are those voices of outsiders that are imposing their agenda on you? And so this is what I really, really want to know. What I really want to know.
mm.
How
That's a
do I,
practice. It's
how
a
do I get,
practice.
Well, and to Kathy's point, you got to do it
Mhm.
every single day. In fact, Kathy, if you unmute for a second, if I said to you, Kathy, if you're out there doing a work project and you realize you've got an empty 10 minutes or so, what are you likely to do with that 10 minutes? You know? So, um,
You
personally,
know,
yeah,
I just realized something because I was watching earlier a British psychologist talking about righteous anger.
yeah.
Uh,
Mhm.
just that anger is meant to protect boundaries,
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm.
and it just came to my mind that our danger zones are marked with red, and we live in the red circle,
Yep.
right?
Life is inside the red circle. Yep.
And that it's I just decided to see it as reflective. It's a reflective boundary at which we should get angry with ourselves when we're approaching it.
Because as a result of experiencing the anger, we are more likely to what?
To reflect.
Yep.
It's a reflective boundary. So we're more likely to reflect and say, how can I handle this situation in a better way?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But if suddenly we get launched outside of that red circle in any direction, what happens to our ability to reflect?
And what happens to our ability to get back inside?
Exactly. We get, well, I think it was Brian's term, we're hijacked.
We go
Yeah.
mag.
Right. Well, this is it.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is it. We're now on the
And that's
dark side.
why
We
that
find the light.
practice that Kathy was talking about becomes important. I call it uh, uh, creating a rhythm and a cadence of
Mhm.
reflection, because it has to, without it, just like as Daniel just described, you're still training yourself. You're just not training yourself in the most efficient way. Like you're training yourself to be a victim, because there are people who are addicted to drama,
Oh
and
yeah.
so they can stay out there too, and that's all they know. And so there's some people who train themselves that something always bad must happen before anything good happens,
Yep.
because they never train themselves otherwise, in terms of reflecting and understanding this power to shift your mentality, to shift your emotions, how to use some kind of PowerPoint maneuver to get centered and re-anchored.
Yep.
They just keep filling that cube with even more.
Yep. And they tell you, you need a bigger cube. Like, no. Uh,
Well,
all
I just in light of that, what people need are better resources, right? They need more resources, they need better resources, more fitting resources,
mhm.
whatever that might be, wherever they are,
Yep.
in order just to handle their current situation and be able to move themselves,
Yes.
to a better position.
Well,
That's
and I think that's exactly right. But in order for them to even begin that process of recovery, they have to become, what do I want to say? That
Reflect.
when we say, well, they have to be reflective, but it's almost like, I know that in a lot of like 12-step programs, they say that you have to hit rock bottom. That we say that, in fact, we had this conversation last night with someone where I said, as we tolerate more and more chaotic situations, we become increasingly adept at handling ever
Yeah,
increasing chaotic
yeah.
situations.
yeah.
Change only occurs when someone finally says enough,
Mhm.
and they draw a line, and it is in that action of saying enough that obviously some reflection just occurred. They made a comparison and said, we're now out of bounds.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
so do we really all have to reach that threshold of activation? See,
Well,
if
we can set the threshold of activation. We can decide, hey, I'm going to go this far, no further. That's what I
Mhm.
do when I go to Vegas, right?
Right. Yeah.
I got
But
20 bucks in my pocket. That's
yeah,
what I'm gambling with.
right.
When it's
You,
gone, when the winnings of it's gone,
that's right.
not taken out of the other pocket.
Right. You can't spend what's not in your pocket. So,
Yeah.
It's all very good, very good. I've never been much of a gambler, but Linda has fun when she's at a casino. Although one of the things I love about Linda is that in such a situation, she never gambles with our money. She instead meets like we were with a business associate who loves to gamble, and he just kept handing her chips and
There you
letting her play. So she's sitting there playing away, and periodically I'd walk by her and I'd say, "Are you up?" And she'd say, "Yes." I said, "Give me your winnings." And she'd hand them to me and I'd walk out of the casino. And, you keep playing, dear, but those winnings, they're going with me. So,
You know, T, I had a patient uh, that exactly that word that Daniel just used resonated with me in terms of better. Because she said literally, she got mad and like was cussing me out and said, you know, damn it, I'm doing the best that I can do. And I'm trying to explain to her that all her baseline, this threshold, you know, we have a baseline of her normal
yeah,
biomarkers were all like way off.
yeah,
And they continued to be way off for weeks. So when she came back, she said, damn it, I'm doing the best that I can do. And we're having a talk. And I said, well, stop doing that.
yeah, right.
That the question isn't if you're doing the best that you can do. The question is there something better? Like,
Hmm.
can we explore that? Because if your best is still producing these biomarkers
Right.
that are so significantly different for you, if you stay in this realm, you're not gonna make it. So your best isn't cutting it right now. So you need to do something else.
Yeah.
Would you be interested?
Hmm.
And then she kind of calmed down. But her whole thing about best, and I mention that because I hear this a lot in organizations oftentimes when we're talking about corporate wellness. There's best practices and this kind of thing, but yet they're getting the same result.
The same outcome. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yep.
When
Uh,
and you know, I'm a hypnotherapist. When I hear about things of that nature, I automatically go to, well, have you looked into what the underlying structure is, you
yes.
know, at the subconscious level,
Hmm.
Mhm,
Right. Let's
right?
do that.
mhm.
Let's do that and see where
So call on me anytime.
yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly, exactly. All right, so this ended up being quite the conversation based on a little experience I had, but I did just want to give you guys a real world example of how easily it is to be moved out of your green circle and watch these mechanisms in manipulation play out. So it was all, and by the way, one other thing I wanted to say is like, while the messaging in the room was certainly designed, no, I'm giving them credit where they don't deserve it. I don't think they designed it to raise tension. I just think they were super high tension and very outgrid angry, and that's what they were expressing. So it was more like they were contaminating people's energy with their own. And because if they were doing it deliberately, they could have been doing it far more efficiently. And that, nevertheless, I also want to point out that not um, not all of the tension that we're experiencing is coming from the message itself. A lot of it can come from the environment. So again, I told you that this room had about 150 seats, and there was a good 400 or 500 people that are there trying to do this. And so, and the ceiling was low, and the room had terrible acoustics, and the sound system was really bad. Can you hear how or feel how each one of those elements would be contributing to your derailment, contributing to your energy? Now add to that this literally everyone sitting in that audience lives here, which means they have to be over 55, and most of them are probably 75 plus. Along with that comes a certain predictable loss of hearing. And so everyone is talking to their neighbors in like really loud outside sorts of voices. And so people are talking on top of each other, and there's all this kind of ruckus going on. People's cell phones were ringing, randomly, and they were taking the calls and going like, "Hello," it's like, and then more people are trying to get in, so the door is opening and closing, and you could hear all the conversation going on outside, etc. So I just wanted to throw that in there just to say, don't think that the message is the only thing that is impacting your derailment or whatever, a lot of times that derailment can begin before the message is even heard. So if you've got difficulty being in crowded areas or whatever, the environment is moving you outside of your green circle, and then the message gets overlaid on top of that. Thoughts about other contributors besides the message for changing your level of tension?
It seems like environment, when you said that, T, sort of like when you go to a rally or a march, and there are people who disagree with why you're there, and they've got huge megaphones and they're screaming into them as you're trying to listen to a speaker. Or
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, they're trying to impose their message over your message. And the problem is that then you really can't hear either message. So it's not the message that's raising your tension as much as it's just the chaos that's in the environment.
chaos. Yes, chaos is right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
chaos.
What
Chaos.
did you
And
notice
the
about yourself, T, if I'm wondering? What did you notice
Yeah, I'll
was
answer
going
that.
on
Daniel,
within you?
you want to chime in
I,
before?
I just wanted to say our senses get overwhelmed by so many
They
different
do.
things.
They do. They do. They do.
Whatever is overwhelming our senses and whatever we're susceptible to. I personally stay away from crowds of people because of scents,
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
right.
Smells, the things people put. Oh my God, the stuff they sell in this.
Yeah. And then
They give
so
me an
many
immediate migraine.
And so many of the people that are at these events are visually disturbing at the very least. And so my eyes hurt looking at you people. And so it's just,
There is.
it really is. And there's music probably going on, etc. But Brian, to your question, what do I do? Um, well, the truth is that initially I get pulled in. And so it's only once I start feeling my level of tension going up into stress that I go like, wait. I'm not in my green circle anymore. I guess what I'm saying is I don't know that I detect when I first step outside the green.
Yeah,
And
that's what I was asking because for me it's a subtle thing. Because
yeah,
like to Daniel's point, like I'm highly sensitive person. I don't like crowds. I do well one-on-one, even
yep,
though I'm a
yep,
sports
yep,
fanatic,
yep,
but I hate crowds.
yep,
And so I don't feel necessarily myself getting pulled out. But
yep.
once it's out, or once
Right.
I'm out of the circle, then it's like a excuse my language, like a oh shit moment.
Yeah, well, no, it's exactly right. But I think that now then becomes the challenge or the opportunity for us to figure out if we can develop greater sensitivity to detecting when we are being even slightly moved outside of the green circle. Maybe that would help us to better manage ourselves inside of the green circle. Otherwise, once we're outside of that green circle, do we all recognize that we become another player in the drama?
Mm,
Whether we're
wow.
the spectator or whether now I'm having thoughts and feelings and opinions and I've got questions. And at one point they said that one of the things that the residents here, and again, we're talking about 35,000 residents here, the general manager and his top executives, again, this is a big organization, so there's real employees that are involved in this thing. Absolutely none of them live inside of Sun City West. And that got the biggest shocking kind of groan. And I'm sitting there kind of going like, why does that surprise people? You moved here because you're retired. So, you didn't move here because you wanted another full-time job. So yeah, so it was just kind of a weird reaction response to kind of notice from people. But point is, you have to allow for the fact that we are all still humans. And
Mm,
while we can work really hard to understand the center and get to the center and all that, we're still going to be subject to all of the manipulations that are out there. Hopefully, we recognize that the manipulation is afoot before it gets to be too bad.
See,
Move it. Yep, Daniel.
yeah, as you're talking there, and I'm looking back at recognizing the red ring as a ring of reflection. Now I'm looking at the green and the purple.
Yes.
and saying, hey, you know what we've really got here, maybe what we're identifying is another way of looking at things, that in within the center you've got a ring of reflection that helps you stay centered.
Yes. And
Within the green you have a ring of reflection that helps you stay, whatever that word would be.
Yeah.
Whatever that word would be.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. No, I think you're absolutely right.
So, that's for another time. What would those words be?
Well, yeah. And I think that, the reflection you're talking about that's happening inside the green circle is in part what the green circle is really all about. When we are in the center of the change grid, we're able to observe everything that's happening up grid, out grid, down grid, in grid. We see it all, we understand it all, we recognize it all, but we're not participating with it. That's that whole art of caring detachment. It's when we see something up grid and suddenly get pulled up grid with it instead of observing it, we're experiencing it. Or out grid, it's one thing to observe it, even intellectually. For example, one of the questions that or one of the allegations that was made is that there's $3.7 million missing. And people are going like, oh my God, and they're all being all very reactive about the whole thing. And there I am trying to stay in grid, going like, maybe out here a little bit, maybe even an analytical thing. I said, well, the size of organization we are, I'm sure that our books have to be audited periodically. When's the last audit? People want to see the budget. I want to see the audit, or they have question marks about whether or not there's any illegal activity going on with handling of our money. Isn't that why we should hire a forensic accountant or something? I mean, the board has the power to do all those kinds of things. And the problem isn't with the board, it's with the management team that, again, is supposed to work for the board, but somehow or another, boy, they've turned the tables and that board works for the employees.
And each of them are thinking, oh God, did I get caught?
Yeah, right. In which case, now you go like, right now, there are 3 open positions on the board. You think anybody wants those positions? But there you have it. And I'm going like, no, I'm happy to sign your little petition, but I do not want to get involved. Going back again to this idea about capacity, also goes back to values, or how you go about choosing what's going to go in to your cube for the day. Can we fill our cube with things that are inside the green circle? Like today, I'd like to go and work out, and I'd like to go for a walk, maybe go on a little bit of hike in nature, and spend some time with Linda and playing with the cat. We want to fill our day with those kinds of things. I want to work on a fun project. Let's go do a little bit of gardening. It's all this kind of stuff. I don't want to go out and deal with all this stuff that happens between the green and the red circle.
You've identified me perfectly, T.
Yeah, that's all I want is a peaceful, balanced, harmonious kind of life. That doesn't mean that there aren't some challenges. That doesn't mean that there aren't some goals and things, but they're still inside the green circle. So there's a certain gentleness to all of them, regardless of what we happen to be, looking at.
This is interesting. It sounds to me like those points that Daniel just described and what you just talked about, like the power is in first noticing and then choosing. So I call it special ops. Like when we're observing something, we get to notice and then choose how we're going to participate. That's why I call it special ops, because like I said, I know when I'm hijacked in some, or the triggers in some situations, like when I'm doing all of this traveling. So I double down on recovery strategies, but there's some situations that I'm just not keen on, and it gets me. And so that's where I have to really be keen on noticing and then choosing the best possible way to get recentered, to get a favorable outcome for all stakeholders, so that I don't become too emotionally wound and say something that
And then you're
I
too
might
far
have to
up,
regret.
too far
Right.
upgrade. Kathy, what did you want to
Yeah,
say?
if I can just comment here, I was out of the conversation for a while. I got a call from somebody I had to talk to, so I don't know what was covered in between, but this important concept of choice. I mean, that's one of the reasons that purple dot is the power point, because power lies in your ability to make a choice and make choices. And we make choices. We don't think we have the power to choose, but we have the power to choose everything. Our thoughts, our emotions, our responses, everything, how we feel, how we're going to, all of that. And it's the concept of choice that I think is at the heart of power, and that keeps us in that center within the green circle. And, as you were saying, being aware, I've been working really hard at noticing myself in different situations and being aware, somatic, understanding your own body and how your body feels and your breathing and your heart rate and your pain and your discomfort and the energy around you. That's where, when you stay within the green circle, you are essentially that aware. You are monitoring how you are feeling so that you can notice when you're stepping outside of it. And it doesn't mean you don't step outside of it. It just means that you know when you're stepping outside of it.
Yep, and doing it consciously, deliberately. Let me add one more thing to this, the thought around choice. I've always said that one of the most powerful things that humans can do is choose. It's also one of the most terrifying things humans do, because the belief is that the moment you limit your choices are going to limit you. And there's a whole lot of people out there who have fear of missing out and all that sort of stuff. So I just want to throw in that sometimes the choice that we make that serves us best is the choice not to choose. So rather than saying, like, do I have to get into either of these camps about do the recall or don't do the recall? I do not. So I can choose to not make a choice. And I think that's probably one of the most, I want to say, empowering aspects of choice in the center of the change grid.
It's the choice not to play.
Yeah, to not shoot, or it's the awareness, going back to Daniel's idea about this reflection kind of thing, to be aware enough to say a choice is not required here, or even if it's required, it's not required now, and it's not required for me to be the one who makes it. And so, yeah.
And I think that the key there is it's very, I think it's overly simplistic to just simply say we have the power to choose and you can make no choice, because doing those things, using that power, making no choice, requires that we use resources, we use processes, that we do something, or else it's magic.
Yeah, well, and then that is because so
Okay.
you're going like
So in light of that, that reflection concept is really about looking, in the center of the circle and being in a situation. And I go back to martial arts, or you can use, in any situation that you come to, that you have, if you have the ability to reflect on those things that you were talking about, those, those dynamic things like your heart rate,
yes,
your blood pressure, things of that nature that you can feel, that you can self-monitor, then you can move around your thoughts about which direction to move and feel the tension and find your center.
Yep.
And you the moving is being done to find the center, because the center is where you want to be, or it's too much trouble and you say, okay, I choose not to find my center.
Interesting. No. Yeah, I like, I like the way this conversation is actually unfolded, even though this was not the subject for today. And we are at the top of the hour, so let me just say that I'm okay we didn't get to the subject I'd mapped, because this was a subject, or is a subject, that Chris has requested, and Chris isn't on the call today. I think he's doing a leadership program. But what we would be doing is taking a look at some of these. Why is this giving me no cancel that? These tensions they're talking talking about, like, where does the expert live on the change grid? Where does the learner live on the change grid? Because they're saying that one of the tensions that leaders are experiencing is that traditionally they were supposed to be experts. And now the emerging role of a leader would indicate that they would fare better if they were willing to be a learner. And you need both. You need to be somewhere in between those. Well, we know that those qualities, whatever the quality happens to be, has a kind of a home place on the change grid. And so I think it would be interesting to kind of see, where does the emerging leader live on the change grid, that skill set, and where does the traditional leader live? Where is that skill set, if you will? So I would like to do this subject, but this was great. I really do think that if we want to change the world, we can only change the world by changing the people in the world. And the change that we want to help them make is to develop this sense of awareness that they are able to make the choices, to decide where they're putting their energy, their responses, et cetera, all these things that we talk about, not just in ChangeWorks, but in all the other things we've all learned over the years. People are giving their power to everyone else. They're relinquishing their control to other people with other agendas. Instead of going like, nope, that's all mine. I'm reclaiming it now. I will decide how I'm going to respond in any given situation.
Absolutely.
Yep. So that's what it's all about. Oh, Daniel just chatted over everyone his contact information. And by the way, I did send to everyone a week or so ago an email because Brian and Daniel wanted to connect. And I thought, well, I don't know if you guys have contact for each other. And because it's a circle, I thought, like, I'll share with all of you guys one another's email addresses. And so that was all in the to line of your email message. I just put everybody into the to, so you all have it. You all have one another. So
Thank you, T, for that. Yeah.
yep. And by the way,
Excellent.
Daniel is in California. Is that right, Daniel? You're still California?
I'm in LA.
You're in LA. You guys know Shags is up in the San Francisco area, a bit north
Awesome.
from there. And Kathy, you are on the East Coast. Is that right?
I'm in Connecticut.
In Connecticut. Yeah. Brian is somewhere in the world. Can't tell. Edie's in North Carolina. We're in Arizona. So, and we usually have, when David's on the call, he's Michigan. So we have a nice little scatter group in just our core. And, obviously we get other people.
Oh, speaking of scatter groups, can I
Yeah.
just mention something, T?
Sure.
I didn't have my glasses on. My eyes were dry, and I was looking at a small image of the change grid, and I realized it would be very interesting to have a plot that basically shades in the nodes according to the number of adjectives.
Oh, yeah. Well, ultimately,
It's
that
like a
whole,
map.
yeah, that adjective map, we really wanted to come up with 10 adjectives to go inside of each one of these squares. So that would be a total of 1,440 adjectives. But to
Wow.
Daniel's observation, there are far more adjectives that describe the extremes than there
Yes.
are that describe the middle. And so I think we have just over 1,000 adjectives on the map right now. So there is room for a few hundred more, and that would end up creating balance across. But as you look at all these different models of human behavior and you digest all those models, reduce them just down to the adjectives that they're using, it's interesting how darkly populated these, the danger zones in particular, would be with those adjectives, and how sparse it becomes when you get to the center. So yeah, not very many words there. And by the way, if you really look at the adjective map, there are several squares that don't even have a word in them. So, because we're looking for subtleties and nuances as we start to move adjectives hither and thither. It would be great to do that. Okay, well, Kathy, have yourself a good time next week. Oh, they're coming to you? Or are you going to San Diego? You got San Diego.
No, they're coming to me, but I know that my days will be called, they'll be taken up. So
Yeah, well,
thank you.
you can imagine that right now, the autumn that you guys are having up there is it's at its peak. Is it starting to pass already, or is it?
Oh, no, it's not at its peak at all.
Is it?
It
It hasn't
is.
got there yet. Okay.
Oh, no, it's in the 60s. It's green still in Connecticut. It may be in Vermont. It's there,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
no. Here we won't get our full foliage probably for another 3 weeks.
Ah, all right. Well, there you go. There you go.
But it's still beautiful. It's still pretty, and it's still good. So they'll enjoy it. So that's good. But thank you.
If we walk outside, no matter what time of year, we can't tell you what time of year it is. So,
Yeah.
and San Diego is pretty consistent as well from,
Yes.
it gets cooler and all that, but yeah, you don't see a whole lot of fall color changes here unless we go up in the mountains. So, and even then, one of the biggest losses we feel moving to the west is the loss of sugar maples.
Yeah.
Because it's a sugar maple that knows how to throw out some color.
Yeah. This is a beautiful time to be in New England. It really is. Yeah.
All righty. Okay. Well, everybody, have yourself a wonderful weekend. We will chat again very soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.